Yeah, you haven't missed anything. Well,
Dave, are you still on YouTube? Yeah. So if you've clicked go live, has it given you any options? Does it say green live?
It says live in the corner.
All right. On the, you know, the screen panel that I was on about, where you can see all of us on YouTube.
Yeah.
Underneath, did it say green live?
Excellent connection next to the green. Just says live.
Yep, that's brilliant. We're live. Thank you.
right, thank you and welcome. I'm Ken Hawkins, Cabinet Member for Environment and Highways, and welcome to the decision session for today. I'll do the introductions to everybody else in a bit. I just need to state the arrangements for public access to remote meetings. During the COVID-19 pandemic, virtual meetings are taking place, and please note that any member of the press and public may listen to proceedings at this virtual meeting via the web link, which will be publicised on the council website at least 24 hours before the meeting. You'll have a link there via YouTube to paste it into your browser. Members of the press public may tweet, blog, etc. during a live broadcast, as they will be able to do during a regular committee meeting in the council offices. It is important, however, that councillors can discuss and take decisions without disruption, so the only participants in this virtual meeting will be the councillors concerned and the officers advised to the committee. We now move forward. Obviously, I've just said that everybody, this meeting will be broadcast live via the internet. Can I have apologies, Joe?
None received, Cabinet Member.
Any declarations of interest from members? None. We take them as and when. Any questions or deputations?
None received, Cabinet Member.
Thank you. Now, item 4, and for the public, we have this item, the strategic environment contract, and I'll take item 5, outcomes and recommendations from scrutiny, overview and scrutiny, with this when we go through the discussion, and then after that we got the parking services report. So I believe Callan is leading on this.
Yes, that's right, Cabinet Member. I hope you can all hear me. So the Strategic Environment Contract is delivered on our behalf currently by Amy, and it's the main contract through which our environmental services are delivered. So that's anything from the waste and recycling service, street cleansing activities, grounds maintenance activities, and cemetery maintenance activities. And the current contract expires on 31st of March 2022. So in October last year, we took an options paper to the Cabinet regarding future delivery options for the Strategic Environment Contract, and the Cabinet agreed to retender the Strategic Environment Contract rather than extend the contract term with Amy. So to oversee the contract management of the retender, we've put in place a robust contract management structure and governance structure, and that's shown in your report on page 6 under section 3.5. So we've got a programme board, which is chaired by the Assistant Director for Highways and Environment. And then sitting beneath that is a project team, and that's a multidisciplinary project team. And that team is supported by technical consultants, Eunomia. And Eunomia were appointed because of a lot of experience in supporting local authorities with complex procurements, which this is one. And we're also being supported by Sharp Pritchard, who are our legal consultants. I think what it's also important to stress, it's not on the current chart, but we also have the Strategic Environment Contract Board, which governs the current contract, and that board will also receive updates regarding the progress of the procurement, and also is a forum for answering questions regarding the procurement process. So that's not in the report, but I think that's an important point to stress. So the project team will be responsible for numerous work streams to deliver the contract. The scope of the contract is the same as it currently is now, except for with one exception, and that is that we're including the forestry contract as well. So that will be part of this particular procurement, as well as the waste and street cleansing and ground services. So we're proposing that the procurement process to follow is the competitive dialogue procurement process. And the reason for this is that the strategic environment contract is a multifaceted contract. It's a complicated contract. So we know what outcomes we want to achieve, but we can't explicitly specify exactly how we want the services delivered. So what the competitive dialogue process enables us to do is to build up bespoke solutions for delivering the contract by having regular conversations and discussions with the bidders. So it allows us to have a solution that is bespoke to Solihull. So we're proposing that that process is followed because it gives us that level of control and also flexibility. So the competitive dialogue is a 3-stage process with a pre-selection stage. So at the pre-selection stage, we will assess the financial standing of any potential bidders and also their past experience of delivering similar contracts. And then there's the 2 further stages to the process where we can engage with bidders at the different stages of the development of the contract solutions. And we're proposing as part of the strategy to take 3 bidders through the selection stage and then 3 bidders through each of the different dialogue stages. And that's to allow us to have a competitive process, because the bidders will know that if they get through the selection stage, there's a 1 in 3 chance of them being successful in potentially winning the contract. So we believe that that will allow us to have a competitive procurement process. So we move on to the contract award. The contract will be let on the basis of the most economically advantageous tender. And we're proposing that there is a 60-40 split with the score, with 60% allocated to quality and 40% allocated to price. And the reason why we're proposing this is that we believe that it's really important to deliver high quality services to the residents of Solihull. And by having this particular ratio, it should enable us to do that and also to develop innovative solutions through the dialogue process with prospective bidders. So a few more details about the contract. The current contract with AMI is an integrated contract in that we have one contractor providing all of the services. It works really well, and there are flexibilities and synergies between the different service areas, which we would want to maintain through the next contract. So we're proposing that we have an integrated contract with one primary contractor. We're also proposing that the contract this time is for 10 years with the potential to extend for a further 10 years, so in total potential 20-year contract. And that's basically around the level of investment that the contractor would have to put into this contract, and also around the anticipated life of a refuse collection vehicle. And I think it's really important to stress that we will have regular reviews throughout the contract, and we will review the performance of the contractor, and within the contract there will be the ability to terminate the contract if we are unhappy with the performance of the contractor. And similarly, they will also have the right to terminate the contract with us if they're not happy with the contract. So we're proposing an initial 10 years, we'll have a review phase, and then we can decide if it's right for us and right for the contractor, whether we then want to extend for a further 10 years. So our approach to risk through the procurement strategy is that we think the party that is better placed to manage a risk should take on that risk. So an example of the local authority taking on a risk would be around the risk of recyclate, the recyclate market. So we wouldn't expect the contractor to take on the risk of the fluctuating recyclate market. We'll take on that risk. We take that risk on there, and we intend to do that through the contract. And also, as with the current contract, we'll have some key performance indicators, and the KPIs will be set to drive enhanced performance of the project through the contract, but they need to be reasonable, measurable, and not unfairly punitive towards the contractor. So we'll develop a key set of performance indicators, that the aim of which is to increase performance through the contract and stimulate enhanced performance. So if we look at the procurement timetable, we're proposing to publish the OG notice in July, and then it's a long procurement process. As I say, it consists of several stages, with the actual contract award being scheduled for September 2021. And what that does, it leaves us 6 months mobilisation between the contracts, for the new contractor starting and AMI terminating the contract. So we've got six months to mobilise the contract which is considered standard in this type of contract. So just a point of note as well regarding the approach that we're proposing and seeking approval for with regards to the procurement approach. In February last year, before coronavirus, we did have a number of soft market testing sessions with the leading industry representatives of companies who are likely to bid for this contract. And what was really positive from Solihull perspective, that they were all really keen to be potentially involved in a new contract for Solihull. They thought it was a good opportunity to work in Solihull, and they also thought that the approach that we're proposing to the procurement was reasonable and was something that they would be encouraged to bid for. So that's really positive from our perspective. So the Cabinet member is therefore asked to support the procurement strategy for this strategic environment contract. So just answer any questions.
Is Daddy Cullen then? Chris, do you need to come in at all?
No, Cabinet member, no. Cullen's covered all bases, so it's any questions at this point.
Okay, thank you. Say for members here, I'm aware that Councillor David Cole and Councillor Tim Hodson, you're aware that we've been on the Strategic Environment Contract Board, and I was listening to Scrutiny Board the other day where a lot of issues came up. I'd just like to remind us all, that this is first stage of a process. We're not going to sort out our wants at this stage. They're going to be coming forward throughout the process, and we see that in the table in the report 414. What I would, if I could start off, I've got a few questions for Callan. I'll ask the first two straight off. How certain are we of the target dates in that that table? How certain are we of the dates? And this process we're going through, is it tried and tested and supported by our advisors?
Yeah, I think I'm unmuted now. It is quite key that we try and stick to the dates that are established in the timetable. There is an element of some flexibility, but we want to be able to maximise the amount of dialogue time that we have with bidders so that we can get the solutions for the contract absolutely right for Solihull. So there is a little bit of flexibility. That's probably around the time that we would need to take to evaluate the solutions. But the other thing we've got to be conscious of is that we do want that 6 months mobilisation phase, so we don't want to eat into that if we can. So there is a little bit of flexibility, but we want to try and stick to that timetable as much as we possibly can. And regarding the procurement process and both our legal and technical advisors have got a lot of experience in supporting local authorities through this type of complex procurement, and that's one of the reasons that we selected them. We went through a competitive process to appoint them both, and I think their bids both stood out to the evaluating team as being really, well, they gave us confidence that they could help us through this process and support us through this process, and they have both got a proven track record of delivering contracts that the actual local authorities wanted to achieve. One of them is Sunset Waste Partnership, and Eunomia have done a case study on that, which is publicly available, about how they guided Somerset through the whole procurement process to get the outcome that they wanted at the end of the procurement process.
Yeah, thanks, Colin. My other question for now, and I'll put it out, is that our current contract with AME has been 7 years, and we've rolled it forward, and also it's probably an opportune moment to thank AME for our partnership. We will continue this partnership for another year and a bit to April 2022. And AME have been good partners, and we've worked with them. We've worked them well. So, what are the benefits and risks of having a 10-year contract in this circumstance?
The benefits are several, really. That by having a longer term contract, say longer than a couple of years, we can really start to establish a good working relationship and partnership with the contractor. And also, the longer the contract term, the more likely they are to be prepared to work with us to deliver innovative solutions and invest in technology to ensure that we can provide the best services for residents in Solihull. Of course, a risk to having a long contract is if the contract isn't performing, then you could have a contractor you're not happy with. However, within any standard contract, there would be the ability to terminate a contract if the contractor isn't performing. And there will be a lot of mechanisms within that contract whereby you could remedy any non-performance before you got to the stage where you would have to consider terminating the contract. So all of those safeguards will be put in place as part of the contract document development. But I think we've seen with Amy, by having a fairly long contract with them, that we've been able to change our services, and we've built up a really good working relationship with them. And we've never been in a dispute situation with them. And I think it's because we've had that ability to develop that relationship, and we hope that that would be something that we could do with a new contractor as well.
Cabinet member, just to come in on that, just to reiterate Callum's point about the fact that that term does give us that opportunity to deal with what we think is important, that strong relationship. And also it's about the feedback from the soft market testing. So we know when we've spoke to the market leaders, when we've had those honest round the table conversations, that longer term contract's much more appealing, and we're more likely to get that interest from the market.
Ken, you're on mute.
Oh, yeah. Determined I wasn't going to do that. Yeah, I've used the. Oh yes, Tim, you've. Sorry. No, I'll go to Catherine because she responded first, and then yourself, Tim.
Okay, so I think probably what I'm going to say probably going to come to no surprise to some of you because I did stick it in an email, but I'm really, really concerned about this. And maybe it's because I work in a corporate environment where we do have to deal with long-term contracts and procurement. So a lot of this is coming out of my recent work experience where we're having to challenge costs extensively. But I am worried about this being the wrong approach at the wrong time, particularly in view of the impact that COVID-19 has had on finances. And I suppose the question for me is really, can we afford this right now? And this is very much coming from my background experience that integrated, it's great in one sense, it's nice and easy to manage. You've got one point of contact. You don't have to worry about managing a separate curbside waste stream, a separate forestry stream, and all those things. So it's much easier, but you pay for that ease and you pay for that service. And particularly if anything gets subbed out to, say, a separate forestry provider, because I think that was flagged as a concern that not all bidders are going to be able to provide or have the natural resources to provide the forestry services, then you generally immediately pay a 5% markup for the privilege of having your integrated service provider handling those or managing the contractor for the forestry service, rather than what the price you would get if you went direct to them. And I suppose my question really is, in this current climate, can we afford the luxury of an integrated contract, or do we have to revisit this because the world has changed and say, actually, we need to get our costs as low as we can, and that does mean breaking it up, taking on more workload ourselves to manage it? So I suppose, yeah, my question really is, can we afford this approach right now?
Yeah, Callum, do you want to answer that, please?
When I know we're in a different situation now with coronavirus, but I think our view is that the coronavirus element of things, although it clearly will have an impact on council finances, shouldn't have a significant impact on the delivery of the contract. And the area where it would potentially have an impact is around the contractor's contingency arrangements. So we are asking them to provide more detail around their contingency arrangements. With regard to disaggregating the contract, there is a benefit to doing that. We think that would create more issues, and they would be management issues, but we would lose that flexibility that we've currently got between our services. And an example of that is through coronavirus. we've been able to remobilise staff across those maintenance areas, other areas of the contract to support the waste contract through the coronavirus. If we had a disaggregated contract, that wouldn't be very easy to do, because there would be a level of protectionism of the contractor delivering the ground service to the contractor delivering the waste service. So we are still confident that an integrated contract is the approach for us to take, and we don't think it would necessarily deliver financial savings. And as you say, it would also mean that we would have to significantly increase the staff that we have at the council at the moment to manage that number of contracts.
Could we, sorry, it's a bit of a follow-up on that, sorry, one
Yes,
further
please.
question.
Yeah, go ahead, Catherine.
Yeah, could we possibly, as part of the quotation process, when we're going out for RFQ, could we test that and maybe get them to quote for the integrated and providing the management, and then also for the kind of the broken down? Is that a possibility? So then we could evaluate both scenarios?
That's not an option with the current procurement strategy that we're putting forward, because we are putting forward that integrated approach, and I think that is our preference. So to then, it's not something that we could currently do to say, can you put in a disaggregated bid as well? So that's not the scope of what we're proposing with the procurement strategy.
Yeah, no, I think there you realise, Catherine, that look, it went through cabinet in October 2019, and the final sentence of that report before the recommendations were the risk of pursuing a LATCO option were too great and favoured one of retendering the contract. And here is the officer say, look, we've got some experts advising us, and they are, they are leading experts in their field. Tim, do you want to come now, please? You can come back later, Catherine. Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. Just to open up then to say we're looking here at a very big and wide-ranging contract, so it does provide some of the key services that our residents receive on a day-to-day, week-to-week basis. So it collects the bins, it deals with the street care and fly tipping, and obviously now it will include forestry as well. So it's a very big contract for the council. It's a big decision for us to make. Officers advise me we're talking about 12 to 15 million pounds is the value of this contract. So it is something we obviously need to have clear oversight over as elected members. It's it's a big part of what the council delivers for the borough. I have got a few questions. So the first one, I'll just take them in one at a time if that's okay. So first of all, on page 5, right at the start of the report is where it refers back to the cabinet decision made in October 2019, and that was the cabinet was decided to retender the contract rather than establish a local authority company. Now that meeting was held as a private meeting, so I suppose one question I have is the council in a position to give any indication as to what evidence and information was relied upon in arriving at that decision? And the second question to that is, should this procurement process result in us not being able to appoint a contractor, or if there's problems down the line, is the local authority company option still there as our backup option? So I'll start off with that question. Thanks.
I think I can, before I ask Colin to comment, I think it's fair to say, Tim, look, there's representatives of those, obviously the voting members in cabinet from one group, but there were representatives there. I can't remember from all parties. I can't remember anything to the contrary. And then again, these private minutes went through the following council. So there's been up till now, when you've got the 11th hour when we're going through the to start the process, to start the official process off, and then we start saying, well, why did the cabinet? What evidence did we have? you know, I know we had a lot of evidence. We discussed a lot of this, and we decided to follow the process that we did. But I think I'll leave it to Callan to answer your other issues.
Yes, as the Cabinet member said, we again engaged consultants to support us with carrying out robust options appraisal of the retendering option and the LATCO option. So we evaluated those, did a lot of due diligence around those, looked at the risks and the benefits of both. And at the time, I think the decision was made that actually, because of a lot of uncertainty, particularly with regards to policy around waste, that it was probably better and an external contractor, a waste management company, would be better placed to manage those risks in the initial term of the contract, and that potentially a LATCO could be something that we would consider later on. But that's why it was agreed to retender the contract and then potentially keep our options open for the future, which I think is probably the position we would be in. Regarding your question, if the contract failed, so if the contract failed now or the contract failed in the future, we would have to have a fallback position, and that probably wouldn't immediately be a LATCO, because obviously you can't set those up in 5 minutes. It take a lot of time and effort to set up. But we would have to consider, in the first instance, if the contract failed, taking an element of it back in-house whilst we put the preparations together for a LATCO or retendering. So that would be the fallback position should any contract fail, the current contract or the future contract.
Okay, Jim, you want to come in again? Carry on.
Yeah,
and then I got Councillor Cole after you, sir.
Thank you very much, Cabinet Member. And just really to follow up on that, really the purpose of my questioning is so that if any observers looking at this, if the public are wondering why the council made the particular decision it did, obviously it was in a private meeting, so we were there, and representatives of my group, in fact my group leader was at that meeting, so it's not that we didn't ask questions, we did, it's just that an independent observer, a member of the public just looking at that report wouldn't understand why the council has chosen that option in particular. So thanks, Callum, for answering the question about it being sort of the backup option and what steps the council would take if a contract were to fail. Next question I have is regarding one of the things that was brought up at the scrutiny board meeting, and was the fleet of vehicles that will be used in this contract. And obviously the council has got a commitment to zero carbon net neutral by 2030 of all its operations, and obviously this contract would fall part of that. And so I'm asking really for reassurance that the process we're following will ensure that this contract will meet that. And thank you.
Obviously, that's key for us as well. Key that we want to improve the green credentials of the contract and to help contribute to the council's overall target with regard to carbon. So to that end, within the contract documents, it does explicitly state that we want to explore with the bidders alternative fuel vehicles, whether that be electric vehicles, hydrogen, or any other sources of fuel that we can move away from diesel. So that will definitely be something that we'll explore through the bidders through each of the stages of dialogue, because obviously they will have experience of other contracts that they're working on, and the benefit is they can bring that experience to Solihull. So we will definitely be considering that through the dialogue process. And we will also have a KPI as well, which is related to carbon performance on the contract.
Yes, thank you. I'll let you come back shortly. I'll give Councillor Cole a chance. David.
Thank you, Chair. It's not really a question, it's more an observation, really. Like everybody else, 6 months ago, I'd have been more than happy to give the nod to this, to go ahead with a 10-year and possibly 20 years contract. However, things have changed, and a 10-year contract under the present circumstances, I think, is a bold move. And I think we should tread a bit more carefully. Maybe we should be going back to Cabinet and saying, you know, should look at this again. and come back to us with another proposal. But I do have my concerns. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, Callan, I mean, this one's for you. It's yeah, because obviously there's a proposal for email, even to consider the contract and have a yearly targets. To how I read it was to look at how what finance will need to run the contract the next year. But what is the problem is in having a short-term contract? Well, I've asked you this before, but can you reiterate that, and also what would happen if Cabinet was asked to relook at this?
With regards to this type of contract, if we went out to tender and said we were going to let, I don't know, a contract length of less than 7 years, I think it's extremely unlikely that we would have any bidders bid for the contract, because it just wouldn't be worth their investment to bid for a contract of less than 7 years. As I say, historically, they've been let on blocks of 7 because that was the life of or anticipated life of a refuse collection vehicle. They can now last a lot longer than 7 years, but I would doubt that we would get many bidders bid for a contract with less than a 7-year term.
Sorry, Cabinet Member, just to add to that, I think Callum's right. I don't think we get any bidders, but also I think if we did, I think it would cost us more. So the other risk there would be that actually it would cost us more money in the long run.
Okay, I've got Catherine and then Tim wants to speak again. Catherine, please.
2 points. I very much agree with the concerns that Councillor Cole has raised about the 10-year duration. I think you've probably explored those anyway, but I think the need for flexibility and to change, given the rapid pace of change that we're having, particularly also around requirements around environmental waste rules, I think we're probably expecting a lot of change. And I think I do worry how we manage that flexibility in a long-term contract, which is why I put that year-by-year target setting approach and maybe year-by-year budget approach. The idea with that was to do it within the 10-year contract, but in effect each year agree a separate service level. So this year we want this, next year because we've now got food waste we want this, and kind of do it like that rather than getting a price for 10 years and then kind of having to vary it. But that's kind of where I was going with that. Back to my point about the procurement, we have found at work that actually by doing that far greater level of breakdown, we're actually saving about 40 to 50% on quotes that we would have just taken as gospel for the last 10 years without challenging. So it's really bringing us through, doing that much greater level of diligence and breaking down costs is actually giving us a real financial benefits. But the question I really wanted to ask, completely different subject, was around, I suppose, the RFQ and the requirements. So, and again, maybe this is because I haven't been in some of the earlier meetings, but when are we going to go and see or be able to review the list of what we're asking for service-wise? Because I know certainly from my residents, I get a lot of noise about vegetation not being cut back in a timely fashion, bins left in the middle of the street, green waste collections into December. I think we all want to know when we're going to do food waste recycling. And I suppose, what are we writing into the contract in terms of what are we asking those bidders for, and when will we get an overview of that?
Callum.
I think going back to Councillor Hawkins' point at the beginning of the question session, I think we see the forum for that being through the Strategic Environment Contract Board. So I think what we'll probably do is, once we've got the suite of documents to a point where we can share them, we will have a session through the SEC board to go through that. Councillor Hawkins, you're on mute.
Yes, sorry again. It might be useful, Catherine. Well, first of all, have you been sent any papers by I think it was Councillor Slater about papers from the Strategic Environment Contract Board we had? If not, it might be useful for you to receive the the type of things that some documents show what we actually look at the environmental contract boards.
I haven't, but that would be useful. Yes.
Yeah, yeah. So I think it's not the answer to everything, but at least it will show how it's scrutinised by all members and officers, bringing our well, as it is at the moment, Amy to the table, and of course we do that with our highways contract as well.
Cabinet member, so just on that, just to help Councillor Thomas, we can send through the terms of reference and previous notes, documents, etc., just to help bring Councillor Thomas up to speed on that.
Yeah, that would be great.
Yeah, Tim.
Thank you very much, and just really to support the comments from Councillor Thomas and Councillor Cole about the length of contract, and I think it is a concern that does warrant serious consideration. And I mean, I personally always favoured a local authority company being set up rather than going out for another re-tender. And I suppose the COVID situation has changed a lot, and I really do think we would be sensible to have another look at this. Whether that is a report back to Cabinet at some point, I don't know, but I just don't feel 100% sure at this point just to go down this route, given the changed circumstances, without at least doing some re-looking at this. I just had another question though on just the contract. I understand, for example, is going to be put together on the basis of what we do now plus the forestry on top, but I understand there's a sort of option B to it. I just wonder if officers could explain that further. I understand that would allow for things like if the government made a decision soon on food waste collections, and if we were to increase our recycling performance and change our collection arrangements. So I just wanted officers to share a bit more detail on that, please. Thank you.
Yes, Councillor. As you say, we are working in a period of uncertainty regarding the resources and waste strategy and what we will be expected to do through governance. And we're waiting for the Environment Bill to make its way through Parliament. But we do expect that in the future there will be a requirement for us to collect food waste. So with that in mind, we will be asking prospective bidders to provide solutions for the service as it currently is, and then for providing a service that does include the collection of food waste, and also looks at different collection frequencies for refuse, so looking at alternate weekly collections. So we will be asking bidders to provide solutions based on those two options.
Yeah, and I think, and what I'd like to point out, and I want to do this in a way not to criticise other local authorities, but we saw last autumn and winter the problems neighbouring authorities had with their refuse collection services. We saw all the rubbish piled up in the streets, and the difference is that they were insourced, they were run locally. By having this system, we don't have those problems. We didn't have those problems in Solihull. And it's also, bearing in mind with the COVID response has been mentioned, again, because of our contract and our great partnership with Amy, we were able to keep things running. Certainly the weekly household waste, the fortnightly refuse collections, and the grass cuttings and the wildlife waste planting. We're able to do all that whilst other authorities actually didn't have that luxury. So consequently, it all comes down to a decision and what's best for the residents. I know the Cabinet supports this decision, and I'm minded. Well, certainly, what I see, I think we've got a great process to work forward. This is just a starter for 10, basically. There's still a lot more work, and I'll bet you at the end of the day there won't be. Well, certainly all members of the scrutiny board, it doesn't matter what colour party they represent, all want a first-class service, as first-class service as we can provide. So consequently, a lot of things that's going to actually end up in our final contract will be decided further down the line. Do I have any more speakers on this subject before we go into decisions? Just want to get the right mouse to the right screen. Okay. I'm aware of, I won't call them concerns because they're issues, and a lot of these, well, every question that's been asked today has been asked before leading into this. And I'm confident, having been on the strategic environment panel, that it gives us a process to look at the KPIs that we want as members, and also allows us to work in partnership with whoever successfully gets this contract, as we do already with Amy and then Balfour BT. So I'm being asked to paragraph 2.1 that the Cabinet member approves a procurement strategy for procuring the new strategic environment contract. I'll do that, but it's important for democracy and for ourselves and for the public that the cabinet portfolio and the portfolio holders are kept up to date in relation to how that contract is processed. We have those target dates of the OJ notice, and then the other deadlines in July and August, and we will be involved with that process. Can I just have that clarification there, Callum?
Councillors, could you repeat that, please? Sorry.
Yeah, sorry. That in relation to the process, it will come back to this meeting, this decision session, but it's also come back to the spokespeople. Perhaps it shouldn't come as an item on the strategic environment panel, certainly while our existing people are there, but certainly we can do this offline outside the existing strategic environment contract.
Yes, I think probably what we should have clarified is, yes, we wouldn't include the director from Amy in those meetings, but no, we would just specifically have the members on the strategic environment contract board, and yes, we will bring information through that board regarding the procurement process and information as Councillor Thomas requested regarding the specifications. So we'll bring that through that meeting forum.
And I'm just scrolling down to. Does any members wish to? Because I want to do 4 and 5 together. Does any member wish to make a comment about the recommendations for the scrutiny board? Because I do support them. Yeah, I do support them. Yeah, it's on the bottom. Well, I haven't got the page number on there, but certainly it does mention, when you go into the recommendations, that the comments and views recorded in the preamble above, the board made the following unanimous recommendations to the Cabinet portfolio holder: that the proposed procurement strategy for the new contract be supported, and that the draft strategic environment contract key performance indicators be supported to the scrutiny board for consideration at the future meeting. So that will be further down the line, certainly. Okay, do we have any more? So I'll move forward in that, thank you. The next item then will be the car parking strategy. Thank you, Callan and Chris, on that. And we go to Port Oby, I believe.
Good evening, everybody. I'm joined on the meeting today with our car parks manager, Carl Newman, and our finance officer is with us as well, Wayne Farrington. Report A looks at parking services. It covers two elements of the parking service. Firstly, the annual update, where we look at the performance for 2019-20. This was to then take those performance figures forward to the annual report that we submit to the Department of Transport. And the second part of the report looks at how the service is going to recover through the COVID-19 recovery phases. I just pick up the main points in the report if I may, and then happy to take any questions. The facts and figures around the parking services are all summarised in Appendix 1. Overall, the service had a very good impact in 2019-20. It achieved its business case, was very visible. We dealt with a lot of number of public requests for support. Just draw the highlight on the Appendix 1. Top right-hand corner, that looks at the park income performance, which by the end of the year, we did have a negative variance, which is explained in the report. The middle part of Appendix 1 looks at some of the reasons behind that performance. Those are the main car parks that we manage across the portfolio. You'll see all of the car parks in the red bars are slightly down on previous years. And actually, when you look a little bit deeper into the figures, not only is there slightly fewer visitors to the car parks, there's also slightly shorter dwell time as well, which reduces the impact of the financial term. You'll see a slightly larger drop at the Shirley on-street parking there. We believe that was down to the closure of one of the main retail stores in the centre of Shirley, which was closed for a refurbishment for a good part of the year. The section of Appendix A focuses on the performance enforcement team, and quite clearly you can see the impact of the COVID-19 in March earlier this year. We had a very good performance, and I know it still exceeded the target of 25,070 penalty charge notices, but the last month was due to just lower performance on the network, lower usage on the network, and the message that we were moving into lockdown. The financial figures are set out there as well, and in the bottom right-hand corner for the income and expenditure. So to the 4 elements of the service, which we have, how we manage the car parks, and I think it's a credit to the team that this year Carl has led the team opening all the car parks safely, and they're in very good quality. They've retained all their park mark certificates. The enforcement service has been out and visible. We've been out to a large number of school gate enforcement issues. The number never ceases to amaze me how we are out there supporting on a daily basis, over 170 of them this year. It also looks at our bus lane enforcement service. As you know, Solihull had its first enforced lane 3 years ago down the Load Lane corridor. It's gone very well. Compliance is still an issue at certain times of the day, hence we do justify having the CCTV enforcement along that route. Last year, Cabinet approved relocating one of those cameras due to the poor compliance at the Solihull Gateway project. That's at the entrance to Pollock Road. That camera has moved in December and has proven to improve compliance through that area since Christmas, which is also good to be able to report. Most recent addition to the service came with the abandoned vehicle service. That's now fully integrated into the parking operations. We dealt with 770 inquiries last year, which is a rise on the previous year, which is good to see. We do get a number of inquiries that aren't actually abandoned vehicles. We do see vehicles that are parked up for the airport and train stations where people think they've probably gone off on holiday rather than abandoned vehicles. And overall, those inquiries dealt with within the required timescales. It did lead to 8 burnt out vehicles being dealt with, and we did have to store 2 vehicles. But on the whole, working very closely with colleagues at DVLA, we've made the streets of Solihull pretty much free from abandoned vehicles. Overall impact of the parking service. There was one small change announced late on in the very recently actually by the Department of Transport. Previously we could only use CCTV enforcement for bus lanes and school keep clear markings, but now the legislation's been changed and we can now deploy CCTV cameras where we have a mandatory cycle lane. Unfortunately, we haven't got any yet, but that may come forward as part of the ongoing temporary active travel measures we've got going and a future report that you'll see on the local cycling and walking improvement plan. So watch the space on that one. So the impact of COVID-19 really right at the end of the financial year, when on the 23rd of March it was announced that we were going into lockdown, and by the 20th of April we had approval from Cabinet Member to introduce free parking and suspend parking instruments. Both changes have gone down really well with customers and the residents of Solihull, and the retailers, which we've managed to support those ones that have obviously stayed out, and the critical key workers as well have had access to free parking in Solihull. Earlier today, members of the meeting made aware that the government announced further changes from the 4th of July, whereby we will be allowed to have some less restrictions on the lockdown, which will be pleasing to see, and we'll see some pubs and clubs start opening and the leisure market start to recover. We're bringing ourselves along with the rest of the Western conurbation at the moment. Birmingham have reintroduced parking charges, as of Coventry. Sandwell have given notice that they're looking to introduce parking charges from the 1st of July, and the other representatives of the West Midlands are thinking about doing the same thing at the moment, currently monitoring other activity. The recommendation before you today is based on a recovering economy locally. We're seeing more activity, although less than what you'd normally see for the time of year. We are seeing more people out and about on the network, and with that comes the risk that we can't actually get people to those shops if there isn't some sort of management of the car parks coming forward. So the only way we is by reducing the car parking charges that we had back in April the 1st. That's also in line with what our partners are doing in Solihull Town Centre. At the Touchwood development, they reopened earlier last week, and they have now introduced charges after 2 hours, and I believe they're also looking to reintroduce their full tariff from the 1st of July. Again, it's been disappointing to hear the reports really dangerous and inconsiderate parking, and as a result of that, the team reintroduced warning notices so that we were able to support residents where they see that activity going on, and we are looking to introduce all enforcement measures back from the 1st of July. To comply with best practice, though, we are recommending that the measures should come on with a full 2-week period of warning notices, and then we'd reintroduce actual parking enforcement live fines the 14th of July. That, in essence, is the report before you today. Happy to take any questions at this stage, Cabinet Member.
Yeah, thank you, Paul. I know you, David. I've got Tim asking first, and then I'll come to you, David. Yeah, first of all, before I'll ask Tim to question. Yeah, can I say, so welcome the report. I thank you, you and your officers for what they've done, obviously this last year under challenging times, and also reacting quickly to my request to reinstate fee periods in Shirley and Noel, and also a specific thank you for the officers for how swiftly you did move to free car parking to help everybody in the borough, and also how swiftly you moved to address safety issues, potential safety issues in the town centre and Shirley through increased footfall. I think all those measures are proportionate and commensurate with the risk. So I thank you for that. I've got Tim and then David.
Thank you very much. Just firstly, to start off with the annual report. So the parking services team obviously does a lot of work, and just like to thank the team as well for the excellent interventions that have happened over the past year. So, for example, we all get a lot of complaints about inconsiderate parking, school gate parking particularly, and to see the team act positively on that is really welcome. Obviously, we'd like you to have a lot more resources because it's a big problem across the borough. But the results that you've been able to achieve have been excellent. So just want to put that on the record. And obviously very much welcome the decision that was made last July, I think, which was to ensure that the 3-hour period of free parking in Shirley was maintained, and a similar decision was made for Knoll as well for the 2-hour parking. So I think those are positives. I understand obviously there's a financial issue there in terms of income, but in order to support those centres, that was absolutely right decisions to take. And just want to ask a couple of questions about the 1st of July. So in terms of the tariffs being restored at our car parks. So I do support that, but I just want to ask a few things. So I know, for example, the M&S car park in Solihull, currently you can only pay with cash when, obviously at the moment it's free, but I don't believe there's an ability to pay contactless or by card at that car park. So just wonder if we can have assurances that a system will be in place by the time of the 1st of July so that customers can pay in a contactless manner at that car park. And I think as well, I'd just be interested to know what stakeholder feedback we've had, like Solihull Bid, for instance. So I know they came to our scrutiny meeting last week and raised the issue of the car parking. They did reference Touchwood obviously had got a 2-hour free period, and there was a bit of concern about all-day car parking as office workers return and that sort of thing. So I just wondered if we'd had any stakeholder feedback as well in response to these proposals, and whether we've adjusted anything on that basis. I know Paul mentioned Touchwood are likely to reintroduce their tariff from the 1st of July. Do we know that for definite? So those are the questions that I've got, but I do support the restoration of the charges.
I can't remember yet. We are promoting, as part of the switchback on, we are looking to make sure we use as much cashless e-payment system. We have the My Permit system operating in all our car parks. For the M&S, as Councillor Hodgson points out, it is our only pay on foot car park. We went through a change process about 5 years ago where we introduced pay and display. But this car park, because of its concessionary arrangements with the key stores there, was really important to keep the barrier control. It isn't a cash system now. We are going through a procurement process to try and bring forward a wave and pay type system onto the list. Are doing our best to get it available for the 1st of July. If it's not the case and it's not there in time because of that procurement process, we will be looking to bring in measures for closing and to support operations to make sure it's safe in there. At this stage, I can't give you a guarantee that it's going to be available, but the team are working towards the 1st of July. With regard to the bid, Touchwood work very closely with both members of the bid, Mel Square Management Company and Touchwood, and we're in close liaison with and how we manage the town centre parking together. We send out hourly updates between each other so we can manage the number of customers that are coming through, and we're seeing a steady increase over the last week. As that bit of confidence is rebuilding in Solihull Town Centre, that we have the measures in place that people come back and shop safely in Solihull. So that's what we'll be continuing to do. We are working together with them. Maybe it is their intention to turn their tariff on in both the Touchwood and the John Lewis car parks, because they are managed separately from the council's car parks on the 1st of July. We'll continue that engagement between now and the 1st. And I think today's decision will be key to those discussions.
Yeah, thank you, Paul. Yeah, and as anecdotally, actually, I went into Touchwood. I chose to park in Touchwood the other day, and I found the system there was quite safe. It's it's excellent. So well done them. And I presume, and I do know that that they're going to reinstate their charges normally on the 1st of July, but it's also fair to say until the 1st of July, shoppers can get free parking at Solihull car parks. David, you wish to speak?
Yes, thank you, Chair. There are quite a few people that travel into town and city centres on the bus, and I'm one of them. But the government are actively discouraging people using public transport. We're going to have to use our cars to come into the town centres. And I would have liked to have seen a slowly rising the tariffs on this, possibly a half price tariff until August, the end of September, when we should be coming out of this COVID situation. Because those people will be penalised. They want to do the right thing. They want to use public transport, but they're being actively discouraged from doing it. And of course, when they get into the town centres, they're going to have a parking charge through no fault of their own. The second point is, and basically for Paul, have you got a contingency plan if there's a second spike in this COVID situation? Thank you, Chair.
Yeah, thank you for that, David. Paul. Paul.
Sorry about that. Councillor Cole, thank you. Yeah, we are aware of the issues on and the government. Seeing return to public transport slowly improving this week. The messages are that people do have to wear masks, unfortunately, just to be safe on there. And that does mean that people have to travel differently or shop differently. And I think that's one of the positives that we can take from COVID-19, that we are seeing some changes in behaviours, particularly around sustainable travel. If you can shop local, then I think people are getting that message that they should shop local. If they do have to travel, then they have to travel safely. So there's a combination there. There's also the internet shopping that's really grown and will continue to be a competitor for the local high street. But those people that can travel and get in the high street, then obviously we need to provide some provision for them. I hear what you say about the introduction of a phased reintroduction of tariffs. Unfortunately, the software and the infrastructure that goes behind the tariff is really expensive. So you've got not only to change all the machines, the software and the machines, you've got to change all the cycle and the order behind that gives us the power to introduce those charges. So there's a lot more different mechanism in place to do that review rather than just reintroducing where we were as of the 1st of April. I would say on that point that we didn't actually introduce the Knoll new tariff on the 5th of April as planned because we were in lockdown. But when we go from the 1st of July, the new 2-hour free tariff would go back in Knoll, so that Knoll and Shirley get as they've asked for in the free and display world. So we would like to bring that forward, but unfortunately there's a big mechanical problem to actually do a phased introduction. I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, thank you, David. Well, Paul, and thank you for those questions. But what I do advise people quite often on social media, I try to remind people that yes, I as you know, I don't like having to charge shoppers. I don't know, but it's necessary certainly to manage the car parking to ensure that the shoppers have the best access at the best times. But I think it's also fair to say there are hundreds of free car parking spaces in the town centre. To point of view, okay, between 1:30, an hour and a half at various stores, 2 hours, and also in the council, around by the council building, up to 4:30 at night. So there are several spaces where people can go if you're going to spend for free if there's less than 2 hours in the town centre. But by and large, the service has run very well this year. Okay, so there's no more questions indicated on there. Thank you for your input. And I'll come back to the recommendations. 2.1a, I'll note the performance and financial outturn achieved. I do approve the reintroduction of the council's car parking tariff in all car parks where charges apply from the 1st of July, and support introducing measures to promote the need to use all forms of cashless methods of payment to reduce the risk of further transmission of the virus. I also from the 1st of July, agreed to resume the enforcement of all off-street parking teams and conditions across all council-managed car parks. On-street parking restrictions in residential areas and bus lane contraventions in accordance with our civil parking enforcement powers. And this is an important one indeed. Agreed to refer the parking annual income target to the council's budget setting process due to the projected changes being seen in shopping behaviours in retail centres where charges currently apply. I think that is important because helping our high streets, helping our shoppers is vital, and so we have to make changes every now and again, like we did in July, and then I think November for Shirley and Noel. So it's important that that is a whole council risk and not left to one department. And then agreed to receive the next service update report at the decision-making session in November 2020. I think that covers everything now. Do you agree, Joe? David?
Thank you, Cabinet Member.
Okay, thank you. The time is 17:15, and so thank you for your contributions today. And I'll no doubt see everybody at full council in a week's so's time. Thank you. Bye bye.
Thank you.
Oh, special thanks for Carl. Sorry, I didn't ask Carl to speak, but thank you.
Dave, do you know how to turn off the YouTube stream?
Yeah, it just says end stream now, and just need to hit that, don't I?
Yeah.
I've got one question for you though, Joe.
Yeah. Have you stopped the stream?
Sorry?
Have you stopped the stream?
No. Hang on.
Yeah, if you just stop that first.
Yeah.